All right, here we go.
Someone's got to speak.
Wow, we were just talking up a storm a minute ago.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hello. This is Alan,
I'm Greg,
And I'm James.
and we are
the Spotless Minds podcast.
yes.
Awesome.
So this is our first podcast, and we're gonna be doing a different movie. We're gonna focus on a different movie every podcast. Hopefully something recent, but not necessarily. Might go into the vault. So for this inaugural podcast, we're going to be talking about Christopher Nolan's most recent film, Inception.
Inception.
Which I'm sure many people have seen by now. And if you haven't, I will warn you, this will probably have spoilers.
I haven't seen it.
James hasn't seen it. So, he's going to be spoiled.
What do you do here again?
I'm the wild card. I told you this before we started recording.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah.
You did tell us.
Yeah.
So Inception. Let's talk about it. What did everyone think?
Well, honestly, when I was going in to see that movie, I had this little thought in my brain that if this movie was going to impress me in any way, it had to be better than The Dark Knight. Because for me, The Dark Knight is literally the second greatest movie ever made.
Wow.
Depending on the day.
Yep.
On what kind of day it is for me. Because I might switch it out with Heat. But so I figure...
I can confuse the two while watching them.
I know, right? But when I went into the see Inception, I was like, okay, this had better be at least as good as The Dark Knight or better. So I was honestly going in expecting the greatest movie ever made, and I was not disappointed. It's not the greatest movie ever made, but I wasn't disappointed,
yeah.
And it allowed me to rethink my whole stance on looking at movies like that.
Well, I think it's interesting too that they had such a tight, secretive marketing campaign for it. Like for me personally, I didn't know much of anything about the movie going into it, except for it had something to do with dreams, the cast.
And he'd been working on it for like 12 years.
Yeah, exactly. And so for me, I was honestly expecting to be very confused and very unable to follow it, and I'll have to watch it 3 times to know what's going on. But actually, it was pretty I thought it was pretty straightforward and actually pretty clear with with how the dreamscape works and all that kind of stuff. So it became for me more of just a great action movie with some really cool themes.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what it's all about. But I think James has a whole sheet of notes that he had written down before down here.
I've got a few bullet points.
That's fine. No, that's good. Yeah,
but I was really looking forward to Inception as well. It was the big movie of the year. I mean,
interesting thing that I realized, it's the only blockbuster of this summer so far that's an original idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is depressing and awesome at the same time.
Well, I mean, I think it points to something really good. And Christopher Nolan, it seems like for the last couple of years he's been doing one franchise movie and then an original idea, then a franchise movie, then a more original idea. And I've generally preferred his original movies over the Batman ones.
Fair enough.
And Memento is one of my favorite movies, so I was really sort of keen to him to get back to the mind trippiness.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. When he does those original movies, I think The Prestige is one of the best movies I've seen in recent years. And
yeah, it's one of my favorites as well.
that was the one that came right between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and I thought it was just fantastic.
What I was worried and excited about though is this is probably his biggest original movie.
Totally.
And it's a huge blockbuster, and I didn't want anything to sort of his themes to be watered down at all, and meeting expectations of spoon feeding the audience things or car chases. And I to some degree I did think he did that, but I wanted to ask you before I get into that. Some people are calling this the savior of the intelligent blockbuster. Would you agree with that statement, or is it way too bold?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I think it can. It could be. It could easily be, because if say The Dark Knight didn't have Batman in it, right? That movie probably would have been that savior, right there. I honestly think so. Now that might just be me because I'm a Bat fan, but I don't think it is, because I can watch that movie and take Batman out of the equation and still love it. With Inception, he doesn't have any of that, right? He's got it all down to his one idea, and it's written and directed by this man. He does the whole auteur thing with it, and he got a $200 million budget and succeeded completely in telling an original story, in telling a smart story that had a lot of emotional depth, and he also grew as an artist. And I think that down the road, we could look back on Inception and say that, yes, this movie did either save the intellectual blockbuster or prolong its demise.
Because you're such the optimist.
Yeah.
Is it?
I'm leaning more towards prolong its demise, because movies like Avatar make $1.5 billion, and no one realizes that it's just Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Smurfs.
Yeah.
Is it auteur? Auteur? How do you say that word?
It's a French word, no one really knows.
I think whatever way you pronounce it is fine.
Okay. No,
If you want to roll your R's, that's cool too.
I was legitimately
Auteur.
never thought about it. Yeah, no, I would agree. I think it's interesting seeing like how many people are, talking about this movie, versus like any of the other big blockbusters that are coming out, and like people would obviously they make money and people go see them, but like there's no discussion about it. It's just like people are going to see it just for fun and mindless popcorn flicks or whatnot. But this one's actually getting people talking and getting people excited about movies again. So I think
Yeah, no, it's definitely a force for good in the universe. Yeah. Inception.
Yeah.
If we're talking in a sort of cultural kind of way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's sort of an example to me of the compromises intelligence sort of has to take on some levels to be the blockbuster at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And like still something like Inception, if you match it up against my favorite movie Memento, it's still I think lacks in a lot of regards to meet audience expectations.
Like on that intellectual level?
On the intellectual level.
Okay.
Yeah, and also not just on the intellectual level. I would disagree with you about the emotional depth of the movie. The emotional parts of the movie, especially the romantic parts, were really the failing points to me.
By romantic parts, are you talking about between Marion Cotillard and Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That, as far as the romantic relationship between those two goes, I didn't buy that. I didn't buy that. Mainly, I thought it was because she had been presented as such a bitch or a villain from the beginning of the movie that seeing her in anything but that light was too hard for me. Like when Leonardo DiCaprio his character starts reminiscing about her in a positive way, it's really hard for an audience member to reconcile that with the person that you've seen on screen for that whole time up until that point. And that makes the romance feel forced to me. I'm agreeing with you, is what I'm saying.
So many words.
I don't know if it's actually those things in the story that made the romance forced to me. I've actually found that the romances are forced in most of Chris Nolan's movies, and that's often why the women die or are relegated to memories or something, so they never really have to deal with having too much chemistry on screen because he has a tough time doing it.
He does, but you gotta the emotional core for me was Leonardo DiCaprio himself. His the Cobb's journey, his demons, right? He has the very people have been saying this all the time, but he does have very similar demons to what he faces in Shutter Island, right? It's sort of an accidental companion piece, very much so.
I can see
that. And when he faces off with these demons in his subconscious, and he reconciles it, and he finally leaves it behind or not, right? That really anchors the film for me, and that's where really all the emotion comes from, and it really worked for me.